Cool. This is an interview with Ernie Becker of E5 Life Coaching, who is a recovering addict. Ernie, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So Ernie, let's just jump right into it. Tell me about your journey in addiction, where you started.
Well, basically, I'll start with I was addicted to meth for several years, 10 plus years. It started when I was in junior high school when I took my first drink of alcohol. That actually led me to cocaine. I was about 16 years old when I started cocaine. From cocaine, it led me into crystal meth, which was about senior year of high school. From there, it just ran rampant in my life all the way up to about 30 years old.
So here you are, 30, and let's look at a typical day. What did a typical day look like from beginning to end when you were right in the middle of your meth addiction?
Well, a typical day was pretty insane. You know, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be so tired and it all was sporadically. I can't say that this is actually a typical day, because what would happen is there'd be times where I wouldn't sleep for like 11 days at a time, 5 days at a time. So basically, coming off one of those runners, you know, for me to keep going and maintain at work and function, I had to use drugs. So I would wake up and I would actually use the drugs. And throughout the day, it was just a constant thing, and it was constantly on my mind. You know, I'd be at work and just working, and next thing you know, I'd be popping in the bathroom and doing the drugs, or I'd get in my car, or whatever it took. So it just sort of consumed my life. I didn't eat. So if I take a typical day, I'd wake up and I would actually eat before I did the drugs, because I knew I wouldn't be able to eat after I did the drugs. So I'd have, you know, a bowl of cereal, and then I would get on with it and do my drugs, and I'd go to work. Well, throughout the day, I would just do drugs constantly. Probably every hour I'd pop in and I'd do the drugs. While I was on it, I would and I didn't realize, I thought I was getting a ton of stuff done, but really I was just running in circles. I couldn't think. My mind would just be off racing in different directions. And throughout the day, I just would use, like every hour I would use. And then come the nighttime, I would do the same thing. I'd continue to use, and I would get so engrossed in a project. Maybe it was working on my truck or cleaning my truck or whatever it was, or you know, at the bar gambling. It didn't matter. Whatever I was doing, it took me into other addictions to just numb me and get me to where I didn't feel the pain and stuff that I was feeling in my life.
So I can understand why that's not a typical day. What brought you to a place of saying, I need to get help?
Well, basically, inside, I just felt dead. Spiritually, emotionally, I was just bankrupt. You know, I still had all this stuff. I had the car, I had the wife, I had the kid, I had all these things. I still had my job, but inside, I just was spiritually and emotionally dead. Basically, I got to the point where I was ready to just die. I wanted to die. Didn't want to live anymore. You know, I had that hopeless and despair and bewilderment feelings. And if I didn't make a change, I knew that something was going to happen. I was either going to die, or something would happen to me where I would be disabled, to where I'd have to just live as a vegetable. And you know, I didn't want that.
So here you are. You know something has to change. What do you do? Who do you talk to? What happened?
Well, in my recovery, and it was in 1999, I was married at the time, and we were having some marital difficulties. So I said, well, let's go down for a week-long, or it was a weekend workshop down at Cottonwood in Tucson. And it was a recovery place, and they did workshops to help with marriages, couples, and all that. So really, I went down just for that. And when I was there, they told me, you need to get into AA meetings, get involved. When you get back home after this, get involved. But when I came back, I didn't get involved. I just continued down that same path. And I got to a point where I actually bit all the nails off my fingers where they were just bleeding. And I was up for, 8 days. And I just was like, I'm done. I gotta do something. And I got to the point where I said, I gotta check myself in to the 30-day program. And that was difficult for me, but I ended up checking myself in, and I went to a 30-day recovery program.
Okay. So you're in the 30-day program. When you come out, what does recovery look like at that point for you?
Okay, at that point, and see, my recovery is a little, when I started at that point, I got involved in AA meetings. I didn't go to NA. When I went to AA, my main thing is methamphetamine. So they're talking about alcohol, but really, in the book, a recovery book, it says alcohol is a symptom. So I have all other symptoms. So I related that, and that's where I found the more solid recovery was in AA. I mean, there's guys in there with 50 years sobriety that I was like, I couldn't imagine that. So when I got out, I started going to AA meetings and got really involved. And it was interesting because I got about 90 days of sobriety, and then I relapsed. So I kept relapsing over and over, and then it took me, I would say, about 8 months. And a friend of mine took a shotgun and took his life. And, he was in the same position as me. I mean, financially, he had a prominent family that, at least financially, he was pretty well off. He had a daughter, 1 year old. He had a wife. His wife was pregnant, which he didn't know, and he ended up taking his life. And when that happened, I said, that's me if I don't do something. Now, I didn't feel suicidal at the time, but I had moments where I just didn't want to live. So at that point, I showed back up to the meetings I was going, and I got really serious and got grounded into the meetings. And as I continued with those meetings, it was interesting. I got a sponsor, said get a sponsor, call guys every day, show up to meetings daily, do 90 meetings in 90 days, and your life will change. They say you'll have a spiritual experience. I'm like, what is that? Well, the spiritual experience is you'll have a personality change, which I journeyed down that and continue to have that personality change. And every year since, I've continued to have that, and that's been 2000. So it's been coming up on 11 years of sobriety.
You talked about relapse triggers. For you as a meth addict or the alcoholic, describe one trigger that you have experienced that you're aware of now and you try to avoid, but you've experienced in the past.
One of the biggest triggers that I have had in the past, and continue, they're not as blatant in my face today, but one of the major ones was when I would go by a place where I used to use the drugs, or a guy I used to get it from. And when I'm driving by those areas or just in that environment, I get a little bit of a trigger and I get this little bit of a rush, and I'm like, whoa, when my mind starts to go. But that's where, especially the program, my relationship with God in my life, I'm able to rethink that and pick up the phone and make a call and get through it.
Okay, here, this is the question I want to end with. You're, as a recovering addict, you're in a new profession now called life coaching. It's E5 coaching. And what would you say to students that are becoming counselors that would work with possible addicts? what's one piece of information that would be beneficial for them as a recovering addict yourself that would give them insight into your world, or if they run into or experience addicts in their office down the road?
Well, actually, I could go into a lot of things. I guess if I look at that, for me, it's if you don't experience the addictions and you don't have the addictions, is really get knowledgeable, show up to places where the addictions recovery is at. Also, when you're dealing with your clients, is refer them to solid meetings. And one of the key things is, when I went to my first AA meeting, you know what? I was just like, whoa, this is, and I obviously, they sent me to several meetings. I went to NA, GA, I went to SA, I went to all the different meetings, so I got a feel of all the different ones. And first drink of alcohol.